Jake Morrison had been staring at the same screen for 3 hours. His eyes hurt and his coffee had gone cold, but he could not look away. The numbers on the display kept telling him something impossible, something that would change everything humanity thought they knew about themselves. The ship hummed quietly around him as the USS Valiant orbited the planet below. Kepler 4482b was supposed to be just another dead rock in space, another world to catalog and forget. The science team had come here looking for old alien ruins, the kind they had found on a dozen other worlds. Simple stuff, broken buildings, scattered tools, nothing special. But what they found was not simple at all. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the planet on the main screen. From orbit it looked peaceful, covered in red sand and ancient mountains. Down on the surface, his team was working in a valley where towers of crystal rose toward the sky. The towers were beautiful, catching the light of the distant sun and throwing rainbows across the sand. They were also older than anything else in the galaxy. Lisa Park walked onto the bridge carrying her datapad. She looked as tired as Jake felt. Her hair was messy and her uniform was wrinkled. She had been working in the lab for 2 days straight, running the same tests over and over, hoping the results would change. They never did. "Commander," Lisa said quietly, "I ran the tests again. All of them." The dating is correct. Jake felt his stomach twist. He had been hoping she would find a mistake, something that would make this easier to understand. "How old?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. 2.4 billion years, Lisa replied. She sat down in the chair next to him and stared at the planet below. "That is older than the Xanthir Empire, older than the Vaxian Collective, older than every civilization we have ever discovered. This structure was built before most of the galaxy had intelligent life." Jake thought about that. 2 billion years. Humans had only been in space for 200 years. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. In galactic terms, humanity was still a baby, barely learning to walk among the stars. "Show me the symbols again," Jake said. Lisa pulled up the images on the main screen. The crystal towers were covered in writing, carved deep into their surfaces. The symbols were complex, showing mathematics and physics that humanity had only recently begun to understand. But mixed in with these advanced equations were other symbols, simpler ones that made Jake's blood run cold every time he saw them. They were human letters. Ancient human writing from Earth, from civilizations that had died thousands of years ago. Sumerian, Egyptian, Sanskrit, Chinese, all of them were there, carved into towers that had stood for billions of years. "This does not make sense," Jake said, not for the first time. "Humans evolved on Earth. We have the fossils, the DNA evidence, everything. We know our history." "We thought we knew our history," Lisa corrected him. She zoomed in on one section of writing. "Commander, look at this equation. It describes quantum entanglement in a way that is more advanced than anything we have today. And next to it, written in ancient Sumerian, is a name, a human name." Jake leaned forward, reading the translation that Lisa had written below the symbols. The name was simple, common even. It could have belonged to someone who lived in ancient Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago. But according to the dating, this name had been carved into the tower billions of years before ancient Mesopotamia even existed. "We need to tell the Admiral," Jake said, "and the Council needs to know." Lisa nodded, but she looked worried. "Commander, when the other species find out about this, they are going to be scared. Humanity is already seen as dangerous. We fight too much, we grow too fast, we ask too many questions. If they learn that we might be connected to something this old, this powerful." She did not need to finish. Jake understood. The Galactic Council was a fragile thing, held together by treaties and mutual fear. Humanity had only been accepted into the Council 20 years ago, and many species still did not trust them. If those species thought humanity was hiding ancient secrets, hiding evidence of a lost empire, there would be trouble. Big trouble. "Get me Admiral Carter on the quantum link," Jake ordered. "Priority Alpha. We need to report this before anyone else finds out." But even as he gave the order, Jake saw something that made his heart sink. On the long-range sensors, a small ship was leaving orbit on the other side of the planet. It was a Vaxian scout ship, the kind used for spying and surveillance. The Vaxians had been watching them. "How long has that ship been there?" Jake demanded. The sensor officer, a young man named Carl Hughes, checked his console. His face went pale. "At least 6 hours, sir. They have been in orbit since we found the towers." Can we catch them? Carl shook his head. They just jumped to faster than light speed. They are gone. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. The Vaxians had seen everything. They had recorded the towers, the symbols, the human writing on structures that predated galactic civilization. Within hours, that information would reach the Vaxian collective. Within days, every species in the galaxy would know. Lisa stood up, her hands shaking. What do we do? Jake looked at the planet below, at the crystal towers that held secrets humanity did not remember. Somewhere down there was evidence of a past that had been forgotten, a history that did not match what humans had been taught, and now the galaxy was about to learn about it before humanity could understand it themselves. We keep digging, Jake said firmly. We need answers before the questions start coming. Get every available scientist down to that site. I want to know everything about those towers, where they came from, who built them, and why they have human writing on them. And if the Galactic Council demands we stop? Lisa asked. Jake thought about that. The Council had rules about ancient sites, protocols that had to be followed. But those rules were written for normal discoveries, for ruins that fit into the known history of the galaxy. This was different. This was something that could change everything. Then we will deal with that when it happens, Jake said. Right now, we need to focus on learning the truth. Because once the galaxy starts asking questions, we better have answers. Lisa nodded and left the bridge to organize the expanded excavation. Jake stayed in his chair, watching the planet slowly turn below him. The crystal towers caught the light, sparkling like jewels in the sand. Beautiful and ancient and impossible. Somewhere down there was a secret that humanity had forgotten. A secret that the galaxy was about to learn. And Jake had a feeling that once that secret was revealed, nothing would ever be the same again. He opened the quantum link and waited for Admiral Carter to answer. As the connection established, Jake looked one more time at the symbols on the screen, at the human writing that should not exist. Admiral, he said when the connection opened, we have a problem. A very big problem. The galaxy was about to realize something terrifying. Humanity was not young. Humanity was not new. Humanity was ancient, and they had been here before, and soon everyone would know. The Galactic Council chambers were older than most civilizations. The building stood at the center of Prime Station, a massive space station that floated between 3 star systems. For 10,000 years, species from across the galaxy had come here to talk, to argue, to make peace. The walls had heard 1,000,000 debates, witnessed 1,000 treaties. But today was different. Today, there was fear in the air. Katie Sullivan walked through the entrance hall, her boots clicking on the polished stone floor. She was young for an ambassador, only 43 years old, but she had worked hard to earn respect at the council. She had negotiated trade deals, settled border disputes, and proven that humanity could be trusted. Now, all of that work might be worthless. The chamber itself was enormous, a circular room with seats rising up in levels like an ancient amphitheater. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in those seats, their eyes watching as Katie made her way to the central podium. She could feel their stares, could sense their suspicion. She had seen the images from Kepler 442b. She knew what they showed, and she knew that today, she would have to explain something that humanity itself did not understand. Katie reached the podium and activated the holographic display. The images from the planet appeared above her, floating in the air where everyone could see them. Crystal towers reaching toward the sky, symbols carved into ancient stone, mathematics and physics that should not exist, and human writing, clear and unmistakable. Members of the council, Katie began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I am here to address the discovery on Kepler 442b. The images you have seen are real. Our scientists have verified them through multiple independent tests. The structure on that planet is approximately 2.4 billion years old. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions, demanded explanations, accused humanity of lying. Katie waited for the noise to die down, keeping her face calm even though her stomach was churning. High Prelate Vorn of the Xanther Empire stood up. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms that moved gracefully as he spoke. The Xanthir were the oldest known civilization, proud of their 15,000-year history. Right now, Vorn looked angry. Ambassador Sullivan, Vorn said, his voice sharp, humanity has always claimed to be young. You told us you evolved on Earth only 300,000 years ago. You said you had no history before that. No records of space travel or advanced technology. How do you explain structures bearing your writing on a world your species supposedly never visited? Until last year. Katie had prepared for this question, but the answer still felt strange on her tongue. High Prelate, we do not have an explanation. Everything we know about human history says we began on Earth. We have fossils that prove our evolution. We have genetic evidence that traces our ancestors back millions of years. None of our records, none of our legends, nothing suggests that we ever built structures like the ones on Kepler 442b. Perhaps you simply lied, said Chancellor Drex of the Vaxian Collective. He was large and reptilian, with scales that gleamed under the chamber lights. His eyes were cold as he stared at Katie. Perhaps humanity has been hiding the truth from the beginning. You appear weak, young, harmless, the perfect disguise for a returning empire. Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Katie felt the situation slipping away from her control. Other delegates were nodding, sharing worried looks. She could see the fear in their eyes, the suspicion. With respect, Chancellor, Katie said firmly, that makes no sense. If humanity were a returning ancient power, why would we struggle with basic technology? 3 years ago, we lost a battle to the Krill Raiders. 5 years ago, we asked the Council for help building our first wormhole gate. Why would an ancient empire need help with such simple things? Maybe you were testing us, suggested Ambassador Krell of the Morgath Union. She was small and furry, with large eyes that usually seemed kind. Now those eyes looked worried. Maybe you wanted to see how we would react, to learn our strengths and weaknesses before you revealed your true power. Katie shook her head. We have shown you everything we found. We invited Council observers to Kepler 442b. We have hidden nothing. You have hidden your entire history, Vorn said coldly. Either you lied to us about your origins or you somehow forgot that you once ruled the galaxy. Either way, how can we trust you? The question hung in the air. Katie looked around the chamber, seeing the same expression on every face. Fear, suspicion, distrust. In one day, humanity had gone from being the new species, the young ones learning their place, to being the most feared race in the galaxy. We are trying to understand this ourselves, Katie said quietly. Our scientists are working day and night to figure out what these structures mean. But I can tell you this with certainty. Modern humanity has no memory of building them. We have no ancient weapons, no hidden fleets, no secret knowledge. Whatever our ancestors were, we are not them. How convenient, Drex said with a sneer. You forget your past just as we discover it. And now you ask us to trust you while you dig up ancient ruins that might contain weapons beyond our understanding. Katie felt frustration building inside her. What would you have us do, Chancellor? Should we stop trying to learn our own history? Should we leave the ruins buried and pretend we never found them? You should submit to Council oversight, Drex replied. All human excavations should be monitored by Council forces. All discoveries should be reported immediately. And until we can verify that humanity poses no threat, Earth should accept a peacekeeping force to ensure your species does not attempt to rebuild your ancient empire. The chamber exploded in debate. Some delegates agreed with Drex, demanding that humanity be controlled. Others argued that such actions would violate Council law, that every species had the right to self-governance. The noise grew louder and louder until Katie could barely hear herself think. She looked up at the delegates, at the hundreds of species who suddenly feared her people. Just yesterday, humanity had been one voice among many, respected but not powerful. Today they were seen as a threat, a danger that needed to be contained. And the worst part was, Katie did not know if they were wrong to be afraid. She had read the reports from Kepler 442b. The structures there showed technology far beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. If ancient humans had built that, what else had they built? What weapons? What ships? What terrible power had they wielded before it all disappeared? The Council will vote on this matter in 3 days, announced the Council speaker. An ancient being whose species was so old no one remembered their original name. Until then, humanity will cease all excavation on Kepler 442b. Council observers will be stationed at the site. Ambassador Sullivan, you are dismissed. Katie bowed and left the podium. As she walked back through the chamber, she could feel eyes following her, could hear the whispered conversations. The fear was spreading, growing stronger with every passing moment. Outside the chamber, Katie found her assistant, Ben Cooper, waiting for her. He was a young man, fresh out of diplomatic training, and he looked worried. How bad is it? Ben asked. Bad, Katie replied. Drex wants to put Earth under occupation. He is scared, and fear makes people do stupid things. Will the Council agree? Katie thought about that. Some will. But occupation is a serious step. It would violate our sovereignty, break our treaty rights. The Council has never done that to a member species before. But we have never had a situation like this before, Ben pointed out. He was right. In all of galactic history, no one had ever discovered that a species was far older than they claimed to be. No one had ever found evidence that a seemingly young race might actually be ancient and powerful. Katie pulled out her communicator and sent a message to Earth. The government needed to know what was happening here, needed to prepare for what might come next. The Council was divided, scared, and angry. Some wanted to talk, to understand. Others wanted to act, to protect themselves by controlling humanity before humanity could threaten them. What do we do now? Ben asked. Katie looked back at the council chambers, at the building that represented 10,000 years of peace and cooperation. That peace was fragile now, cracking under the weight of fear and suspicion. Now we hope that cooler heads prevail, Katie said. We hope that the council chooses wisdom over fear, and we pray that whatever our ancestors were, whatever they did, it does not destroy the future we are trying to build. But even as she spoke, Katie knew that hope might not be enough. The galaxy had learned something terrifying today. Humanity was not what they seemed to be, and fear once planted was very hard to remove. The question was not whether there would be consequences. The question was how bad those consequences would be. Greg Phillips stood in the war room of the USS Infinity, staring at the tactical display with a growing sense of dread. The holographic map showed Earth at the center, surrounded by the inner colonies and defense stations. And approaching from the edge of the solar system were 50 red dots, each one representing a Vaxian warship. They were not responding to communication attempts. They were not slowing down. They were coming to Earth with weapons charged and shields raised. Status of our defense fleet? Greg asked, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was racing. Captain Nicole Hayes looked up from her console. She was young but capable, one of the best tactical officers in the Earth fleet. Right now she looked worried. All available ships are moving to intercept, Nicole reported. But Admiral, we are outnumbered 3-1. The Vaxians have brought their heavy cruisers. Our ships are fast and maneuverable, but their ships have better shields and more firepower. Greg studied the tactical display, calculating distances and response times. The Vaxian fleet would reach Earth orbit in 6 hours. The human defense fleet could intercept them in 4. That gave Earth's forces 2 hours to either convince the Vaxians to turn back or prepare for a battle they were likely to lose. The communication console suddenly activated. Chancellor Drex appeared on the screen. His reptilian features twisted into an expression that might have been determination or might have been fear. With Vaxians, it was always hard to tell. Admiral Phillips, Drex said, his voice formal and cold. The Vaxian Collective hereby demands that humanity surrender all archaeological findings related to the ancient sites. Furthermore, Earth will submit to a collective occupation force while we verify that your species poses no threat to galactic security. Greg felt anger burning in his chest, hot and fierce. The Vaxians were not asking. They were not negotiating. They were threatening Earth, humanity's home, the world where billions of people lived and worked and raised their children. But Greg kept his voice level. Getting angry would not help. Chancellor, humanity will not surrender our sovereignty based on archaeological discoveries we do not fully understand ourselves. We have offered to share all our findings with the Council. We have invited observers to our excavation sites. We have been completely transparent. The Council is weak, Drex hissed. They would debate and discuss while humanity secretly rebuilds the weapons that once burned entire sectors of space. We will not make that mistake. We will not wait for you to remember how to destroy us. You have 1 hour to comply or we will take what we need by force. The screen went dark. Nicole turned to Greg, her face pale. Admiral, what are your orders? Greg took a deep breath. For 200 years, humanity had worked to prove they were peaceful. They had joined the Galactic Council promising to follow the rules, to resolve disputes through diplomacy, to be good neighbors among the stars. They had spent decades building trust, showing the galaxy that humans could control their aggressive instincts. And now, in a single moment, all of that was about to end. But as Greg looked at the tactical display, at the Vaxian fleet approaching his homeworld with weapons ready to fire, he felt something stirring inside him. Something old. Something that whispered that he knew what to do. That he had done this before even though he never had. It felt like memory. But it was not his memory. It was older, deeper, like an instinct written into his bones. "Bring all weapons online," Greg ordered. "Launch the defense satellites. And get me President Martinez on the secure channel. The Vaxians want a war. We need to decide if we are going to give them one." "Sir," Nicole said hesitantly, "even with all our ships we are still outnumbered. The Vaxian shields are more advanced than ours. Their weapons have longer range." "Admiral, we cannot win this fight using conventional tactics." Greg smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then it is a good thing we have been studying those ancient structures. Dr. Rodriguez sent me something interesting 3 days ago. Turns out the weapon systems in those ruins still work. And they have been teaching our engineers some very interesting tricks." Nicole's eyes widened. "Sir, are you saying we have been building ancient human weapons?" "Not exactly," Greg replied. "We have been studying the principles, understanding how they work. And our engineers have been having strange ideas, dreams almost, about how to apply those principles to our own technology. It is like the knowledge is still there, buried deep in human DNA, waiting to be remembered." As if to prove his point, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Earth's defense satellites were activating, but they were not using the standard human designs anymore. The satellites were reorganizing themselves, linking together in patterns that no human engineer had consciously planned but somehow knew would work. "What are they doing?" Nicole asked, staring at the display. "Something we used to know how to do," Greg replied quietly. "Something we forgot, but our ancestors made sure we could remember when we needed it." The satellites finished their reorganization, forming a grid around Earth that pulsed with energy. On the display, new weapon types appeared, technologies with names that felt familiar even though Greg had never heard them before. Quantum disruption fields, neural network jammers, temporal displacement generators. These were not inventions, these were memories. The president appeared on the secure channel. Linda Martinez looked tired, the weight of leadership clear on her face. "Admiral, I have been watching the situation develop. The Vaxians are really doing this. They are really going to attack Earth." "Yes, Madam President," Greg confirmed. "We have 1 hour to decide how to respond. We can try to negotiate further, but I do not think Drex will listen. He is too afraid of what humanity might become." "What are our chances if we fight?" Linda asked. "Using our old technology?" "Almost none," Greg admitted, "but we have been learning things from the ancient sites. Remembering things. If we use that knowledge, I think we can defend Earth. But Madam President, if we do this, if we show the galaxy what humans are capable of when threatened, there is no going back. We will never be seen as the young, harmless species again." Linda was quiet for a long moment. Greg could see her thinking, weighing the options. Surrender meant occupation, meant giving up human freedom and independence. Fighting meant revealing capabilities that would terrify the entire galaxy. Neither choice was good. "Do we have a choice?" Linda finally asked. "If we surrender, will Drex be satisfied? Or will this just be the beginning of more demands, more restrictions until humanity is trapped forever?" Greg thought about that. "I think Drex is acting from fear, not from malice. But fear makes people do terrible things. If we show weakness now, every species that fears us will think they can push us around. We will spend centuries fighting to be taken seriously. But if we show strength, they will fear us even more," Linda pointed out. "Yes," Greg agreed. "But there is a difference between being feared and being respected. Right now, the galaxy sees us as potentially dangerous. If we defend ourselves without being cruel, if we win without being brutal, we can show them that modern humanity is not like our ancestors. We can prove that we have learned wisdom to go with our strength." Linda nodded slowly. "All right, Admiral. You have permission to defend Earth using whatever means necessary. But Greg, remember this. Our ancestors destroyed themselves because they forgot that power without restraint leads to ruin. Do not make the same mistake. Win the battle, but do not lose our humanity in the process." "Understood, Madam President," Greg replied. The connection ended. Greg turned to Nicole, who was watching him with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Orders, sir?" she asked. "Send a message to all ships," Greg commanded. Tell them we are about to do something that will change galactic history. Tell them that when our ancestors walked the stars before they became monsters, our job is to prove we are better than they were. We defend Earth, we protect our home, but we do not slaughter, we do not torture, and we do not forget that the Vaxians are scared, not evil. Nicole nodded and began transmitting the orders. Around Earth, the human fleet prepared for battle. Ships that had been built for exploration and trade were suddenly revealing weapons that their crews somehow knew how to use, even though they had never trained with them. Knowledge was returning. Memory was awakening. After 65 million years of forgetting, humanity was beginning to remember what they had been. The Vaxian fleet was 1 hour away. In that time, they would learn something the ancient galaxy had known but the modern galaxy had forgotten. Humans were dangerous. Not because they wanted to be, but because when threatened, they would do whatever was necessary to protect what they loved. The war was about to begin. And when it ended, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Peter Chen climbed down the ladder into darkness. His helmet light cut through the gloom, showing walls that seemed to glow with their own faint light. The air down here was still and quiet, untouched for billions of years until his team had broken through the sealed entrance 3 hours ago. Above him, on the surface of Kepler 442b, Council observers watched everything his team did. Every discovery had to be reported. Every artifact had to be cataloged. The Council wanted to know what humanity was finding before humanity could learn too much. But Peter and his team were still finding things. Amazing things, terrifying things. "Peter, you need to get down here right now," called Amy Rodriguez from somewhere deeper in the tunnel. Her voice crackled over the radio, full of excitement and fear. "You are not going to believe what I found." Peter moved faster, his boots scraping against the smooth floor. The tunnel opened into a large chamber and he stopped in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. The room was enormous, easily the size of a football field. The walls were covered in murals, painted in colors that still looked fresh after billions of years. And the images they showed made Peter's hands shake as he raised his camera to record them. Amy stood in front of the largest mural, her helmet light illuminating the detailed artwork. She turned to look at Peter, her face pale behind her faceplate. "Peter," she said quietly, "this changes everything." The mural showed Earth. Peter recognized it immediately, the blue oceans and green continents, the white clouds swirling in familiar patterns. But Earth was not alone. Dozens of other worlds surrounded it, connected by lines of light that arced through space. And between the worlds, traveling along those lines of light, were humans. "This is a map," Peter said, his voice barely above a whisper. "A star map showing human colonies." "Not just colonies," Amy corrected. She pointed to the symbols written beneath each world. "Look at the dates. These are old, Peter. Really old. According to this, humans did not originate on Earth. We colonized it. Earth was just one world in an empire that spanned half the galaxy." Peter moved closer, studying the details. The artwork was incredible, showing cities on each world, ships traveling between them, humans living and working under alien suns. This was not the story humanity told itself. This was not the history written in Earth's museums and schools. This was something else entirely. "How is this possible?" Peter asked. "We have fossils on Earth. We have genetic evidence showing human evolution going back millions of years. How can both things be true?" Amy moved to another section of the wall. "Keep looking." The story continues. The next section of the mural was darker. The bright colors faded to reds and blacks. The peaceful images of human colonies were replaced by scenes of violence. Ships burned in space, cities crumbled, worlds turned dark. War. "This is what happened to the human empire," Amy said, her voice shaking. "A war that consumed everything. Look at these symbols here. They represent time. If I am reading them correctly, this war lasted for 50,000 years. 50,000 years," Peter repeated. He could not imagine a war that long. A conflict that lasted longer than all of recorded human history. "And look when it ended," Amy continued, pointing to a date marker on the wall. 65 million years ago. Peter felt his blood run cold. "That is when the dinosaurs went extinct on Earth." "Exactly," Amy said. "Peter, this war did not just destroy the human empire. It reset the entire galaxy. Look at these images. Every advanced civilization was wiped out. The survivors lost everything. Their technology, their history, their memories. Humanity had to start over from scratch on Earth, evolving again from the beginning. Peter looked at the images showing the aftermath of the war. A few humans remained, scattered across dead worlds struggling to survive. The great empire was gone, reduced to small groups trying to remember what they had lost. But the mural showed something else, something that made Peter's stomach twist with unease. The surviving humans were not just grieving their lost civilization. They were doing something deliberate, something planned. "What is that?" Peter asked, pointing to an image showing humans gathered around a massive machine. The device was complex, covered in symbols and conduits, clearly important. Amy studied the image carefully. "I think it is a choice," she said slowly. "Look at their faces. They are sad but also determined. They are making a decision." "What kind of decision?" Amy pointed to the symbols surrounding the machine. "These talk about memory, about forgetting, about starting fresh. Peter, I think the survivors chose to erase their own history. They built this device to make humanity forget everything about what they had been." "Why would they do that?" Peter demanded. "Why throw away all that knowledge?" "Because of what they had done with it," Amy replied. She gestured at the images of the war, at the destroyed worlds and burning cities. Their technology had nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy. Their weapons had killed trillions. Maybe they decided that their descendants needed to start over without that burden. Maybe they thought humanity needed to grow up again, to learn wisdom before they learned power. Peter looked at the final image in the sequence. It showed Earth green and peaceful, with the last few humans settling on its surface. They had destroyed the machines, buried the cities, erased the records. They had made a choice to let their children forget, to give them a chance at a different kind of future. "But they left all this behind," Peter said, gesturing at the chamber around them. "They left these structures, these records. Why?" Amy walked to the last wall where text was written in multiple human languages. Some Peter recognized from ancient Earth civilizations. Others were completely unknown, languages that had existed and died billions of years before Earth's recorded history. But the message was the same in all of them. Amy read it aloud, her voice quiet in the silent chamber. "So that when humanity returns to the stars, they will remember what they lost and why they must never forget again. We were powerful, but we were not wise. We had technology, but we did not have understanding. We nearly destroyed everything because we believed our strength gave us the right to rule." She paused, then continued. "If you are reading this, our children, you have returned to space. You have found your way back to the stars. Please learn from our mistakes. Do not let power corrupt you as it corrupted us. Remember that strength without wisdom leads only to destruction." Peter felt tears running down his face inside his helmet. This was humanity's legacy, a warning from ancestors who had learned too late the cost of their arrogance. They had been mighty once, rulers of half the galaxy, and they had thrown it all away, not because they had to, but because they chose to give their descendants a better chance. "We need to tell the Council about this," Peter said. "They need to know that ancient humanity understood what they had become. They need to know we chose to forget." Amy nodded, but she looked worried. "Will it matter? The Council is already scared of us. When they learn that our ancestors willingly gave up power that could destroy galaxies, will that make them trust us more, or fear us even more?" It was a good question. Peter thought about it as he documented the murals, taking thousands of pictures from every angle. The ancient humans had recognized their own darkness and had tried to save their children from it. That showed wisdom, showed growth, but it also proved that humans were capable of incredible destruction. The war that ended their empire had lasted 50,000 years and had reset galactic civilization. What would the Council think when they learned that? Would they see humanity's choice to start over as noble? Or would they only see the threat of what humans could become if they regained their ancient power? "We document everything," Peter finally said. "We report everything. And we let Earth's leaders decide what to do with this information. That is all we can do." Amy agreed, and the two of them spent the next several hours recording every detail of the chamber. The murals told a story that rewrote human history, that changed everything humanity thought they knew about themselves. Humans had not crawled out of caves and slowly built civilization. They had fallen from greatness, had been reduced to primitive survivors who had to learn everything again from the beginning. Everything humanity had achieved, all the technology and culture and knowledge, they had done it twice. And the question hanging over everything was simple. Would humanity make the same mistakes their ancestors had made? Would they let power corrupt them again? Or had they learned? Had they grown? Had they become something better? As Peter climbed back up the ladder toward the surface, carrying data that would shake the foundations of galactic understanding, he hoped the answer was yes. He hoped that modern humanity was wiser than their ancient ancestors, that thousands of generations of struggle and growth had taught them something valuable. Because the galaxy was watching now. The galaxy knew that humanity had been powerful once, and the galaxy was terrified that they might become powerful again. The only question was whether that fear would lead to understanding or to war. The Battle of Saw lasted 17 hours and changed the galaxy forever. Katie Sullivan watched from Prime Station as the reports came in, each one more unbelievable than the last. She stood in the observation deck with dozens of other ambassadors, all of them staring at the tactical displays that showed what was happening in Earth's solar system. The view was being broadcast live, transmitted across the galaxy so that everyone could see. The Vaxian fleet had attacked exactly as Chancellor Drex had promised. 50 warships, the pride of the collective, had swept into the solar system with weapons blazing. They had expected quick victory, an overwhelming show of force that would break human resistance in hours. Instead, they encountered something that no species had seen in millions of years. Humanity at war. The first Vaxian ships opened fire on Earth's defense satellites expecting easy targets, but the satellites did not die. Instead, they activated shields that bent the incoming fire away, redirecting the energy back at the attackers. 3 Vaxian destroyers were destroyed by their own weapons before Drex ordered his fleet to change tactics. Then the human ships arrived. Katie watched as Earth's defense fleet engaged the Vaxians. The human ships were smaller, supposedly weaker, built for exploration and trade rather than military combat. But as they moved through space, they fought with a precision and skill that seemed impossible. Ships dodged fire that should have hit them. Weapons struck weak points that human sensors should not have been able to detect. Tactics were employed that human commanders had never trained for, but somehow knew exactly how to execute. It was like watching dancers who had rehearsed their routine a million times. Every movement was perfect. Every decision was right. But it was not the tactics that terrified the watching galaxy. It was the weapons. Earth deployed technologies that should not exist. Quantum disruption fields appeared around human ships, tearing apart Vaxian shields like paper. Neural network jammers infected enemy computer systems, turning Vaxian ships against their own fleet. And most terrifying of all, something the humans called a temporal displacement weapon, which could age enemy ships centuries in seconds, turning proud warships into floating debris. Katie watched as a Vaxian heavy cruiser, the flagship of their attack fleet, fired its main weapon at a human destroyer. The human ship should have been obliterated. Instead, it activated a device that bent time around itself. The Vaxian beam hit the temporal field and simply stopped, frozen in space. Then the human ship redirected the beam back at the cruiser, using the Vaxian's own weapon to cut their ship in half. Around Katie, the other ambassadors stood in stunned silence. High Prelate Vorn of the Xanther Empire had gone pale. Ambassador Krell of the Morgath Union was shaking. Even the Ancient Council speaker looked frightened. "How is this possible?" someone whispered. Katie did not have an answer, but she understood what was happening. The ancient knowledge was returning. Humanity was remembering what they had been, what they could do. The genetic locks that had kept human capabilities suppressed for millions of years were breaking open, triggered by the threat to their homeworld. The battle continued for hours. The Vaxian fleet fought hard, using every tactic and weapon they possessed. Chancellor Drex was a skilled commander, and his forces were some of the best trained in the galaxy, but they were fighting against something beyond mere training or technology. They were fighting against instinct, against knowledge so deep it was written into human DNA. By the 10th hour, the Vaxian fleet had lost 30 ships. Human casualties were minimal, just 3 destroyers damaged and 1 cruiser destroyed. The difference was not just about technology. It was about understanding. Ancient humans had fought wars that lasted 50,000 years. They had learned lessons written in the blood of trillions, and even though modern humans did not remember those lessons consciously, their bodies remembered. Their instincts remembered. Katie saw the moment when Drex realized he had made a terrible mistake. The Vaxian Chancellor appeared on the broadcast, his face showing something she had never seen from a Vaxian before. Fear. "We surrender," Drex said simply. "Earth, we surrender. Please stop firing." The human fleet ceased fire immediately. Katie felt relief flood through her. They had won, but they had not slaughtered. Earth could have destroyed the remaining Vaxian ships, could have pursued them and made an example of them. But they chose mercy instead. That choice mattered more than the victory itself. After the battle ended, Katie received new orders from Earth. While the galaxy reeled from what they had witnessed, human scientists had made a final discovery in the ruins on Kepler 442b. Amy Rodriguez had found something deep beneath the surface, in a chamber that required both human DNA and human neural patterns to access. The truth. Katie stood before the Galactic Council 3 days later. The chamber was quieter than she had ever heard it. Every delegate was present, even species that rarely attended council sessions. They all wanted to hear what humanity had learned about themselves. "We know what we were," Katie said, her voice clear in the silent chamber. "We have accessed the full historical records from the ancient sites. Our ancestors were conquerors. They built an empire that spanned half the galaxy. They had weapons that could destroy stars. They believed their strength gave them the right to rule over all other species." She paused, looking at each council member in turn. They were wrong. Their arrogance led to a war that nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy. The ancient humans fought for 50,000 years, killing trillions, reducing hundreds of worlds to dust, and in the end, the survivors looked at what they had done and were horrified. Katie activated the holographic display, showing images from the ruins, the murals depicting the ancient human empire, the records of the terrible war. The final choice made by the last survivors. "Our ancestors chose to forget," Katie continued. "They built genetic locks that suppressed human capabilities. They erased their own history. They reduced themselves to primitive survivors and started over on Earth, hoping their descendants would grow up differently. They left the ruins scattered across the galaxy as warnings, as reminders of what happens when power corrupts absolutely." High Prelate Vorn stood slowly, "And now those locks are breaking. You have remembered how to fight, how to destroy. How long before you remember everything else? How long before humanity becomes what your ancestors were?" It was the question everyone was thinking. Katie had prepared her answer carefully. "We are not our ancestors," she said firmly. "Yes, we share their DNA. Yes, we have inherited some of their abilities. But we have also inherited 65 million years of evolution, of learning to cooperate, of building communities based on trust rather than fear. Modern humanity spent 300,000 years learning lessons our ancestors never learned. We know that strength without wisdom leads to destruction. We know that the right to rule comes not from power but from service." "Easy words," Chancellor Drex said quietly. He looked beaten, diminished by his defeat. "But you have the weapons now. You have the knowledge. What stops you from using it as your ancestors did?" Katie smiled sadly. "The same thing that stopped us from destroying your fleet when we could have, Chancellor. The same choice our ancestors made at the end of their war. We choose to be better. We choose to remember the lessons they learned too late." She pulled up another image from the ruins, the final message left by the ancient humans. "Our ancestors wrote this for us. They said we failed because we forgot that power without wisdom is destruction. If you are reading this, we hope you have learned what we could not. The galaxy is yours again, our children. Please be better than we were." The chamber was silent. Katie let the words hang in the air, giving the council time to think. Finally, the council speaker rose. "The question before us is simple. Can we trust modern humanity with the power of their ancestors? Can we believe they have truly learned wisdom?" "That is not the right question," Katie replied. "The right question is, can we afford not to trust them? Human capabilities are awakening whether we want them to or not. The genetic locks are breaking. The knowledge is returning. The council cannot stop that, but you can choose how to respond to it. You can treat humanity as enemies, force us to defend ourselves and create the very conflict you fear. Or you can treat us as partners, work with us to ensure ancient weapons are never used and build a future where power is balanced with wisdom." It took 3 hours of debate, but finally, the council voted. By a narrow margin, they accepted humanity's proposal for a new treaty. Human excavations would continue but with council oversight. Ancient weapons would be documented and then destroyed. Earth would remain sovereign but would accept limits on military expansion. It was not a perfect solution. There was still fear, still suspicion, but it was peace. As Katie left the council chambers, she received a message from Amy Rodriguez. The archaeologist had found one final inscription in the deepest chamber of the ruins. Katie read it on her datapad, feeling tears prick her eyes. We failed because we forgot that power without wisdom is destruction. We became monsters because we believed being strong meant we did not need to be good. If you are reading this, our children, know that we loved you enough to erase ourselves from existence.